What do 1,000 expensive cars submerged underwater look like? But wait, how did they end up there in the first place? I will tell you about several ships that had accidents on the water and ended up destroying billions of dollars worth of elite Rolls-Royces and Lamborghinis. And the funniest part is that in some cases, this was simply due to human greed. Let me start with one of the most well-known cases. On one not-so-great day, as you can imagine, a ship named Felicity Ace, 656 feet long, set sail from Germany to the USA. Built in 2005, it could reach speeds of up to 22.3 knots and carry cars, as its capacity was 118 tons, plenty of space for several thousand cars. But who could have predicted that this voyage would be forever remembered? Everything happened on February 16, 2022. On that day, Felicity Ace was sailing near the Azores Islands, about 104 miles southwest of them, with more than 4,000 luxury cars on board. I'll tell you more about the brands later, and you'll definitely be surprised. Early in the morning, around 9 a.m., a fire broke out and quickly engulfed the entire ship. Attempts to control the fire were unsuccessful, and although the 22-person crew was successfully evacuated with the help of commercial ships and helicopters, Felicity Ace continued to burn for several days. During the tow to shore, the ship lost stability and eventually sank, settling on the seafloor at a depth of 9,787 feet, outside Portugal's exclusive economic zone. As tragic as it sounds, thanks to the quick actions of the Portuguese maritime forces and the ship's crew, all lives were saved. The fire was finally extinguished on February 25th. This incident will undoubtedly go down in maritime history as a reminder of the relentless struggle between humans and the forces of nature. But what damage was done, and what cars were on board? And here it gets completely crazy. The enormous cargo ship was carrying cars worth about $4.1 million. Felicity Ace held an entire collection of cars. The cargo list included not just cars, but real gems of the automotive industry: Porsche, Audi, Bentley, and Lamborghini. For example, among this expensive cargo were 85 Lamborghinis, including 15 exclusive Aventador Ultimates, which are no longer produced and had already been paid for by their buyers. Besides these, the ship was carrying 189 Bentleys and 1,110 Porsches, not to mention the last batch of Lamborghini Aventadors. Notable rarities included a 1977 Land Rover Santana, a Porsche 718 Boxster GTS 4.0, and a 1965 Honda Prelude Sci-R. Unfortunately, all these automotive masterpieces on the Felicity Ace are considered irretrievably lost after the tragedy, with no chance of recovery. This is a huge loss for the car world, isn't it? But what exactly happened on board? Could it have been sabotage? The tragedy of Felicity Ace drew attention not only because of the scale of the fire, but also due to the possible cause of its ignition. It is suspected that the fire could have been sparked by lithium-ion batteries installed in the electric cars on board. Yes, eco-friendly transport for you. These batteries are known for their thermal risks. They can overheat and spontaneously ignite, which is especially dangerous in the confined space of a ship where there's no escape from the fire. And just imagine several thousand cars burning. Lithium-ion batteries are difficult to extinguish with regular water, as water can trigger additional chemical reactions and reignition due to residual heat in the batteries. Moreover, at high temperatures, the batteries can release flammable gases, increasing the risk of explosions, making the fire even more unmanageable and dangerous. Unfortunately, they decided to save on special fire extinguishing equipment. The environmental consequences of the accident can also be significant. Felicity Ace sank near the Azores archipelago, which is a crucial biological hub for many marine species, including coral reefs, tuna, sharks, and dolphins. The region is also known as a migration route for whales that use these waters for feeding. The spill of more than 2,000 tons of oil, fuel, and other pollutants into the water could seriously harm the local marine ecosystem. Although initially it was reported that only a thin oil film formed on the water's surface, the deep water submersion of batteries and fuel tanks poses a long-term threat. As these materials decompose, they can release toxic substances that negatively impact marine life, threatening the health and diversity of marine species dependent on these waters. This accumulating damage, which will build up over years, already surpasses $1 billion. But do you think this is an isolated case? No. Let me tell you about others, with even greater damage and human negligence. The cargo ship MV Golden Ray, loaded with 4,200 brand new cars, experienced a real catastrophe off the coast of the USA in 2019. The cause was overloading, triggered by heavy Kia SUVs. This preliminary conclusion was made by investigators. The trouble began on September 8, 2019. Just 23 minutes after the ship, built by Hyundai Mipo Dockyard, left port, it began to list and soon capsized, sinking. By December 2020, the dismantling of the overturned MV Golden Ray had begun. The ship was cut into 8 pieces with giant saws, and its remains, along with the destroyed cars, were taken away on barges. Initially, there was a theory about a fire on board, but additional details pointed to problems with cargo distribution. During a stop in port, 285 compact Hyundai Accent and Kia Forte cars were unloaded from the ship, and instead 316 large Kia Telluride SUVs were loaded. This significantly increased the mass and shifted the center of gravity upwards. At the time of the crash, there were about 4,300 cars on board, including Ram pickups, Chevrolet Blazer, and Equinox crossovers, as well as Mercedes-Benz SUVs headed to Saudi Arabia. According to an analysis by the U.S. Coast Guard, the Golden Ray was carrying in excess of 1,000 tons of cargo. Additionally, just before arriving in Brunswick, the ship had discharged at least 1,500 metric tons of water ballast, which might have compensated for a severe list when entering the Atlantic Ocean. However, even with such measures, the disaster could have been avoided if the heavy Kia Tellurides had been placed on the lower levels instead of the top 12th deck out of 13. As noted by Jeffrey Falzarano, a professor of ocean engineering at Texas A&M University, attempting to balance such a large mass on the upper levels was like performing an acrobatic trick with a pencil, unreasonably difficult and risky. But most likely, no one thought that rearranging the cars could lead to such a result, simply criminal negligence. But at the end, I'll tell you about an even more outrageous case. Here's another crazy incident. Off the coast of the Netherlands, a serious maritime accident occurred, resulting in the sinking of the cargo ship Baltic Ace, which was transporting new Mitsubishi cars, after a collision with the container ship Corvus J. The Baltic Ace set off from the Belgian port of Zeebrugge to the Finnish port of Kotka. But its journey was cut short by this tragic encounter. The Corvus J, measuring 436 feet in length, collided bow to side with the 485-foot Baltic Ace, causing it to capsize and eventually sink. As a result, Corvus J remained afloat, though it sustained significant damage, while the situation on the Baltic Ace was critical. 18 crew members of the Baltic Ace were found alive on life rafts, but the search for 6 others was unsuccessful. Regarding the cargo, 1,400 new cars were lost, sinking to the bottom of the North Sea. Fortunately, the cars were insured, so the financial losses for the Japanese company were minimized. However, this incident caused delays in deliveries for dealers, although exact details were not disclosed. The main version suggests a crew error on one of the ships, but the exact circumstances are yet to be established. This incident highlights the complexity and risks of maritime transport, where human error can have critical consequences. And yes, the total damage amounted to about $500 million. Not bad, right? But next, I'll tell you about even larger shipwrecks. Meet the Fremantle Highway, a roll-on, roll-off carrier that faced a real tragedy while carrying nearly 4,000 new cars. At the end of July last year, in the cold waters of the North Sea, a fire broke out on board and quickly spread throughout the ship. Traveling from Germany to Egypt, it was carrying 3,783 cars, including 498 electric vehicles, and it appears that an explosion in one of the cars ignited the blaze. Yes, once again, safe electric transport decided to destroy its gasoline counterparts. The situation on board was so critical that part of the crew had to jump into the cold water to save themselves. Tragically, one of them died. Despite all efforts, the fire spread with incredible speed, forcing the crew and passengers to evacuate. Information about the exact cause of the fire remains unclear, as officials have not been quick to share details. However, an audio recording from one of the rescuers leaked to the media, claiming that the cause was indeed the explosion of an electric vehicle that was simply turned off. After nearly a week of battling the fire, the Fremantle Highway was towed to a safe location, away from major shipping lanes. Thanks to the firefighters' efforts, potential catastrophic environmental consequences for the region were prevented. Now that the fire is extinguished, the ship is docked in a port in northern Netherlands, awaiting further damage assessment and a decision on its future. Preliminary damage is estimated at around $1 billion. Crazy, right? The car carrier. Sincerity Ace caught fire in the Pacific Ocean in 2018 with 3,500 Nissan cars on board. The fire broke out as the ship was en route from Japan to Hawaii. The 21-member crew failed to extinguish the fire and had to abandon the ship. 5 crew members subsequently went missing at sea. All 16 surviving crew members disembarked from the rescuing ships and were examined by medical professionals who found them to be in good condition, said Shui Kisan-Kaisha in a statement. Our thoughts and prayers are with the crew and their loved ones during this difficult time. The cause of the fire is still unknown, but the ship owner stated they would cooperate closely with the relevant authorities to determine it. What damage did the owners suffer? About $800 million. A representative of the ship owner, Shui Kisan-Kaisha, reported that the ship stopped in Shibushi Bay on the southern island of Kyushu on January 30th, where its listing position was corrected. Then, on February 7th, it proceeded to the port of Yatsushiro, also in Kyushu, for a fuel tank cleaning operation. According to the global shipping news source Tradewinds, after damage assessment and temporary repairs, the Sincerity Ace headed to Mokpo, South Korea for full repairs, although Shui Kisan-Kaisha stated that the final destination had not yet been determined. The publication also noted that all the cars on board were effectively destroyed. And yes, the loss of 3,500 new cars significantly impacted deliveries to North America, causing dealers to raise prices at that time. Of course, because for such accidents, the end consumer ultimately pays. That's how the market works. Speaking of people, I want to talk about the largest shipwreck of modern times, where thousands of lives were miraculously saved. The wreck of the cruise ship Costa Concordia remains one of the most tragic maritime disasters in history. On the night of January 13, 2012, the ship struck reefs in the Tyrrhenian Sea near the island of Giglio, with 4,152 people on board. The cause of the wreck was a series of errors and miscalculations made by Captain Francesco Schettino and crew members. The Costa Crociere Company, which owned the liner, had a tradition of greeting the island of Giglio with honks from a close distance, without adequate preparation and detailed local maps. On the evening before the catastrophe, Captain Schettino deviated from the established route and approached the island. He turned off the autopilot and navigation systems and steered the ship with several outsiders on the bridge. Indonesian helmsman Jacob Roosley responded inadequately to commands and executed the captain's orders late. Witnesses reported that the group was having a wild time, consuming alcoholic beverages. Shocking, right? As a result, the ship dangerously approached the rocky shore and collided with reefs, causing severe damage to the hull. The ship's power plant was damaged, leading to a power outage, and the ship becoming uncontrollable. After prolonged evacuation efforts, the liner finally settled on its starboard side and was salvaged. The investigation found that 6 people, including Captain Schettino, were responsible for the disaster. The captain received the harshest punishment, 16 years in prison. In 2014, the Costa Concordia was raised and sent for scrapping, and maritime regulations and passenger briefings were tightened following this tragedy. It's a miracle that lives were saved, though the ship's owners suffered nearly billion-dollar losses when considering the subsequent salvage and towing of the liner. As the saying goes, the rich also cry. It's sad that so many incredible cars ended up underwater. While recounting some of these wrecks, tears almost came to my eyes. By the way, if you want to earn money for your car, know how to write scripts, edit videos, or voice recordings, write to our Telegram bot via the link in the description. We would be happy to work with you and thanks for watching.